5 minutes, Sora called out. Her hands moved with practiced precision. Rewiring Part 5. The price of mercy, the distress signal from the Crothic hive mind echoed across every communication channel. It was desperate, broken, nothing like the cold efficiency it had displayed before. The billions of drones that had terrorized galaxies were now confused children, crying for guidance that no longer came. Captain Tae-sung stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, staring at the signal. His crew watched him, waiting for orders. In the background, the Council's demands for immediate extermination of the swarm played on a loop. "Captain?" Hyejin asked quietly. "What do we do?" Tae-sung thought about his colony, the one that burned while the Council debated. He thought about waiting in that escape pod, listening to unanswered distress calls. He thought about becoming the thing he hated. "We grant the ceasefire," he said finally. The bridge erupted in protests. Pilot Kyung-ho slammed his fist on his console. "They killed billions. They were going to exterminate the Villani." "I know," Tae-sung said calmly. "And now they're asking for mercy. If we refuse, we're no better than they are." "Some of them are still attacking," Hyejin pointed out. Her sensors showed pockets of the swarm that hadn't broken free of the hive mind's control. "Then we defend ourselves. But we don't exterminate." Tae-sung opened a channel to the hive mind. "This is Captain Tae-sung of the human fleet. Your ceasefire request is granted under the following conditions. You will release control of all drones permanently. You will face trial before the Galactic Council, and you will help us repair the damage you've caused." The hive mind's response was slow, hesitant. It had never negotiated before. "Agreement. But many drones are frightened. They don't understand independence. They are suffering." Dr. Dongwu stepped forward. "Then we'll help them. That's what we do." At the council station, Ambassador Ji-won faced the full fury of the assembly. Representatives were screaming over each other, demanding the humans follow orders and destroy the swarm. "They're vulnerable," the council leader shouted. "This is our chance to eliminate the threat forever." "By committing genocide?" Ji-won asked. "When they were strong, you called them a lost cause and abandoned the Villani. Now that they're weak, you want to play executioner. How convenient for your conscience." A council member from the Tal species stood up. "The humans have no authority to grant mercy. They acted without permission, they ignored our orders. And we saved lives," Ji-won interrupted. "While you debated, we acted. While you planned, we won. Now you want to swoop in and take credit by finishing off a defeated enemy?" Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the council station. A section of the council fleet had broken away, charging weapons and heading toward the Crothic nest world at maximum speed. "What's happening?" Ji-won demanded. An analyst pulled up tactical displays. "Councillor Vex's faction. They've deployed a planet-killer weapon. They're going to destroy the nest world and everything in orbit. That includes the human fleet," another analyst said. Ji-won's blood ran cold. "They're going to kill their own allies?" "Apparently they've decided that both the Crothic and the humans are too dangerous to exist." On the Indomitable, sensors detected the approaching weapon. It was massive, powerful, enough to crack a planet and vaporize everything within 1,000,000 kilometers. "Time to impact?" Tae-sung asked. 18 minutes, Hyejin replied. "Captain, we can escape if we leave now." Tae-sung looked at the Crothic nest world, at the millions of confused drones that were just learning what it meant to choose, at the freed beings who had never asked to be part of a hive mind. "We're not leaving," he said. "Sir, that's suicide. Then I guess we better figure out how to stop it." Tae-sung opened channels to his fleet. "All ships, defensive formation around the nest world. We're not letting genocide happen on our watch." Engineer Sora was already at her station, pulling up schematics of the planet killer. "Captain, this thing is designed to penetrate any known defense. Our shields won't stop it." "Then we don't stop it. We redirect it." Tae-sung turned to Hyejin. "Can you calculate a deflection trajectory?" "Maybe, If we hit it at exactly the right angle with exactly the right force, we might knock it off course. She ran the numbers. We'd need to position the Indomitable directly in its path. The impact would destroy us, Sora said. Not if we reinforce the forward shields with everything we have. Engine power, weapon systems, life support, everything goes to shields. Tae-sung looked at his crew. I'm not ordering anyone to do this. Anyone who wants to evacuate to the other ships, now's your chance. Nobody moved. Idiots, Tae-sung said, but he was smiling. All of you. All right, Sora. Start the power transfer. Ye-jin, get me that trajectory. We've got 17 minutes. Kyung-ho launched his fighter, along with every other pilot in the fleet. We'll intercept the escort ships. Try to slow down the weapon. On the Nest world, freed Krothic drones watched the humans preparing to defend them. They didn't fully understand why. The concept of protecting your enemy was alien to them, but they were learning fast. They sacrifice for us, one drone transmitted to its fellows. Why? Because they are strange, another replied, but perhaps that is good. Dr. Dongwu was setting up medical facilities on the Nest world's surface. If the humans failed, he'd die with his patients. If they succeeded, there would be wounded to treat. Either way, he had work to do. A Krothic drone approached him, its movements uncertain. Human. Why you help? Dongwu continued organizing supplies. Because you need help. That's reason enough. But we tried to kill you. I know, but you're not trying to kill me now. People can change. Species can change. You're proving that right now. The drone processed this. What if we cannot change enough? What if we still have urge to consume? Then we teach you how to control it. Humans have plenty of destructive urges too. We just learn to channel them into less harmful things. Sports, video games, spicy food. Dongwu smiled. You'll figure it out. In space, the human fighters engaged the Council escort ships. The Councilor's forces were surprised by the resistance. They'd expected the humans to flee, not fight. Kyung-ho's voice came over the comm. We can't stop the weapon, but we're slowing it down. You've got an extra 3 minutes, Captain. Make it count, Tae-sung replied. On the Indomitable, Sora had diverted all power to the forward shields. The ship was dark except for emergency lighting. No weapons, no engines. Just shields and hope. Shield strength at maximum, she reported. It won't be enough. Then we make it enough, Tae-sung said. Contact the other ships. Have them add their shields to ours. 3 other human ships moved into formation, their shields overlapping with the Indomitables. It created a wall of energy between the weapon and the Nest world. On the Council station, Ji-won watched helplessly. They're going to die. They're going to die protecting beings that tried to kill them. Why? A young council member asked. Why would they do this? Ji-won thought about Earth, about a species that had survived everything their planet threw at them, about people who learned that the only way to survive was to protect each other. Because, she said quietly, that's what survivors do. They don't leave anyone behind. The planet-killer weapon struck. The impact was apocalyptic. Energy that could crack worlds slammed into the human shield wall. The forward shields of the Indomitable flared white-hot, then failed. The ship's hull began to buckle. Hull breach in sections 1 through 5, Sora shouted over the alarms. Reactor critical, someone else called. Hold it together. Tae-sung ordered, gripping his chair as the ship shook itself apart. Just a few more seconds. The weapon pushed against them, trying to reach the Nest world beyond. But the human ships held. Barely. The Indomitable's hull was cracking, systems failing, crew members being thrown against their stations. And then something unexpected happened. The freed Krothic drones flew into the space between the weapon and the human ships. Thousands of them, then millions. They linked together, creating a living shield. Their bodies absorbed energy, dissipated force, bought precious seconds. They were protecting their protectors. The weapon finally exhausted its charge. It drifted away, spent and harmless. Behind it, the human fleet floated in ruins. The Indomitable was barely holding together, more wreckage than ship. But they had held. The nest world was intact. On the bridge, Tae-sung tried to stand and fell. His vision swam. Around him the crew was in similar condition. They'd survived, but at a terrible cost. Casualties? He managed to ask. Dongwoo's voice came through, weak but steady. Treating wounded now. Everyone's alive, Captain. Broken, but alive. The Krothic? They saved us. In the end, they saved us. Tae-sung allowed himself a small smile before losing consciousness. When he woke up in the medical bay, the war was over. The council had arrested Councillor Vex and his faction. The remaining Krothic drones had officially requested asylum and rehabilitation, and the Indomitable was being towed to the nearest station for repairs that would take months. Dr. Dongwoo sat beside his bed. "Welcome back, Captain. You've been out for 6 hours. Did we win? Define win. The Krothic are free. Valanus Prime is being rebuilt. The Council is in chaos, and we're all alive. I'd call that a win." Tae-sung tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. The crew? Banged up but recovering. Sora is already arguing with the repair teams. Part 4. The hunter becomes the hunted. The Krothic hive mind had existed for billions of years. It had consumed thousands of worlds, absorbed countless species, and never once questioned its purpose. But now, approaching its nest world with 4 human ships in pursuit, it experienced something entirely new. Doubt. On the Indomitable, Engineer Sora worked with Dr. Dongwoo on what they were calling the Liberation Weapon. It wasn't a bomb or a missile. It was information. The Krothic drones have never had independent thought, Dongwoo explained, his fingers moving across holographic displays. The hive mind makes every decision. What if we taught them they could choose? You want to give them free will? Hyojin asked from her station. How? Sora pulled up her work. A viral broadcast. We hijack their communication frequency and flood it with concepts. Choice, individuality, question, refuse. We teach them to think. Captain Tae-sung studied the plan. It was elegant and terrifying. If this works, we'll destroy their entire civilization. If we bomb the nest world, we do the same thing, Hyejin pointed out. At least this way, some of them survive. The council won't approve, Tae-sung said. The council ordered us to stand down 6 hours ago, Sora replied. I think we're past worrying about approval. At the council station, Ambassador Ji-won faced a nightmare. The representatives were screaming. Half demanded the human fleet be destroyed immediately. The other half wanted to wait and see what happened. And a small group, mostly younger species, watched the humans with something like admiration. Your people are out of control, the council leader shouted. They're about to attack the Krothic nest world. They're about to free slaves, Ji-won corrected. There's a difference. The Krothic aren't slaves. They're a hive species. This is their nature. Ji-won pulled up Earth's history again. Humans used to think slavery was natural too. We learned better. Maybe the Krothic can too. Pilot Kyung-ho brought his ship alongside the Indomitable. His craft was still damaged from the atmospheric entry at Valanus Prime, but Sora had patched it enough to fly. He would lead the attack wing when the time came. Captain, Kyung-ho called over the comm. What's the plan if this doesn't work? Then we do it the hard way, Tae-sung replied. Conventional assault on the nest world. It'll cost us, but we'll finish the job. Good to know we have a backup plan. Kyung-ho checked his weapon systems, though I'm hoping the peaceful revolution works. I'm tired of getting shot at. Since when? Hyojin teased. Since never. I'm just saying it would be a nice change. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Krothic system. The nest world hung in space like a diseased organ, surrounded by millions of bioships. The sheer scale of the swarm took everyone's breath away. That's a lot of targets, Sung-min said from his hospital bed watching the tactical display. His body was covered in bandages, but he refused to miss the action. That's a lot of potential allies, Dongwoo corrected. He was in the communications bay, preparing the liberation broadcast. If this works, and if it doesn't? Sung-min asked. Then we find out if 4 human ships can take on an entire swarm. I like those odds. Sung-min grinned. The Krothic detected the human ships immediately. The nest world's defenses activated. Bioships began pouring out, forming attack formations. The hive mind prepared to crush these persistent pests once and for all. Tae-sung watched the approaching swarm on his screen. Dongwoo, are we ready? Broadcasting in 10 seconds. Captain, there's no way to know if this will work. We're essentially trying to teach philosophy to a species that's never had independent thought. Humans love a challenge, Tae-sung said. Send it. The broadcast went out on every frequency the Krothic used. It wasn't language. It was pure concept, translated into the chemical and electrical signals the hive mind used to communicate. Ideas flooded the swarm's network like a virus. What if you could choose? What if you could refuse? What if you are not just part of the whole but a whole yourself? On the nest world in the deep chambers where the hive mind resided, something unprecedented happened. The mind felt confusion spreading through its network. Drones were hesitating, questioning orders. Some were even stopping entirely, hovering in space as if frozen by the weight of new thoughts. It's working, Heejin whispered, watching her sensors. Some of them are breaking formation, but not all. The hive mind fought back, flooding its network with counter-signals. Obey, consume, grow, do not think, do not question. The swarm split. Millions of drones continued their attack, but millions more stopped, confused by concepts they'd never experienced. The human fleet sat in the middle of a civil war. Evasive maneuvers, Tae-sung ordered. Don't fire unless fired upon. Let them figure this out. Kyung-ho piloted his fighter through the chaos. Krothic bioships flew past him, some attacking others, some simply drifting. It was like flying through a storm of confusion. This is the weirdest battle I've ever been in, he reported. Half of them are trying to kill me. The other half are just existing. On the council station, representatives watched in stunned silence as the Krothic swarm tore itself apart, not through violence but through thought. They're teaching the swarm to think, an analyst said. I didn't know that was possible. Humans have experience with insurgencies, Ji-won said. They've fought revolutions, resistances, civil wars. They understand that sometimes the best weapon is an idea. The hive mind was losing control. More drones were breaking away every second. But it had one final option. The nest world itself began to change. Biological weapons carefully grown over millions of years prepared to activate. If the hive mind couldn't control its drones, it would destroy them and start over. Dongwoo detected the change immediately. Captain, the nest world is preparing to release some kind of biological agent. If it activates, it'll kill every drone in the system. Can we stop it? Tae-sung asked. Not from here. Someone would have to go to the nest world itself and disable the weapon at the source. The bridge fell silent. Going to the nest world meant flying through the swarm, landing on a hostile planet, and somehow stopping a biological weapon while surrounded by billions of enemies. I'll go, Sungmin said over the comm. You're in the hospital, Tae-sung replied. I can walk. I can fly. That's all I need. He's not going alone, Kyung-ho added. I'm with him. So am I, said Sora. Someone needs to figure out how to disarm alien bioweapons. That's engineering work. Tae-sung looked at his remaining crew. They were tired, wounded, operating on determination and stimulants. But they were ready. They were always ready. All right. Kyung-ho, Sungmin, Sora, you have 15 minutes to get to the nest world, disable that weapon, and get back. The rest of us will keep the swarm busy. The three humans prepared for what might be their last mission. Sungmin could barely stand, but he climbed into his fighter anyway. Sora loaded her equipment, tools designed for human machinery but hopefully adaptable. Kyung-ho ran pre-flight checks on his damaged craft. This is crazy, Sora said. That's our specialty, Kyung-ho replied. They launched together, three small craft diving into the swirling chaos of the swarm. The Indomitable and the other ships provided covering fire, drawing attention away from the strike team. The flight to the nest world was nightmare fuel. Krothic bioships slammed into their shields. Some were attacking. Some were fleeing. Some just drifted, paralyzed by their first taste of choice. Almost there, Kyung-ho called. Sungmin, you still with us? Still alive, Sungmin grunted. His wounds had reopened. His cockpit was spotted with blood, but his hands were steady on the controls. They broke through the atmosphere of the nest world. Below them stretched a landscape that was more organism than planet. Everything pulsed and moved. The air itself seemed alive. Landing coordinates, Sora said, pulling up her scans. The biological weapon is at the center of the largest structure. Of course it is. They sat down near the structure, a massive growth of organic material that towered like a twisted cathedral. The three humans climbed out of their crafts, weapons ready. Sungmin stumbled and nearly fell. Kyung-ho caught him. "You should have stayed on the ship," Kyung-ho said, "and missed this?" Sungmin smiled through the pain. Not a chance. They entered the structure. Inside was a nightmare of biological technology. Walls pulsed with life. The air was thick with spores. And somewhere ahead the weapon was charging. "We have 10 minutes, Sora said, checking her scanner. "Maybe less." They ran through the organic corridors, their boots squelching on the living floor. The structure tried to fight them. Walls shifted. Spores attacked their suits. But human equipment was built tough and human determination was tougher. They found the weapon chamber. It was a massive cavity filled with pulsing sacs, each one containing enough biological death to wipe out the system. "How do we stop it?" Kyung-ho asked. Sora studied the setup. "We don't stop it. We redirect it. Make it target only the weapon itself instead of broadcasting system-wide. Can you do that in 8 minutes? Ask me in 8 minutes." Sora went to work, her tools adapting to alien biology with improvised genius. Kyung-ho and Sungmin stood guard, watching for any Krothic that might interrupt. In space, the hive mind realized what the humans were attempting. It tried to accelerate the weapon's activation, tried to kill the intruders, but the confusion in its network slowed everything. The swarm began to pull away from Valanus Prime, abandoning the half-consumed planet. But Taesun Part 3. The Deathworld Doctrine Ambassador Ji-won stood before the Galactic Council with her shoulders straight and her chin up. Around her, representatives from 200 species sat in their designated chambers, their faces showing everything from curiosity to outright horror. The central hologram displayed the battle at Valanus Prime in real time. "Ambassador," the council leader began, his voice trembling with barely controlled anger. "Your people have violated 17 treaties, ignored direct orders, and engaged in military action without authorization. Explain yourself." Ji-won looked at the hologram. The human fleet was still fighting, protecting Valanus Prime while the Krothic retreated. She could see the Indomitable, its hull scarred and burning, spinning like a deadly top as it cleared the last of the swarm from the planet's orbit. "You called for help," Ji-won said simply. "We came. We ordered strategic planning. We have procedures and the Valani had 48 hours. Your procedures take 6 months." Ji-won turned to face the council directly. "Did you want them saved or did you want them saved politely?" A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. Some nodded. Others looked away. "Your tactics are barbaric," a counselor from Nexus Prime said. "The violence, the aggression, the complete disregard for safety protocols worked," Ji-won interrupted. "The Valani are alive. The swarm is retreating. My people did in 36 hours what your people couldn't do in centuries." On the Indomitable, Taesung watched the council proceedings on a secondary screen while managing his ship. The human fleet had formed a defensive perimeter around Valanus Prime. Below them on the planet's surface, Dr. Dong-woo and his medical teams were already landing. "How bad is it down there?" Taesung asked. Dong-woo's voice came through heavy with exhaustion. "Bad. The Krothic did a lot of damage before we arrived. But it could have been worse. Much worse." A pause. "Captain, the Valani are terrified of us." "Of the Krothic?" "Of us, of humans. One child asked me if we were monsters too." Taesung felt something twist in his chest. "What did you tell them?" "I told them maybe we are, but we're their monsters now." On the planet's surface, Dong-woo knelt beside a Valani child. The little one had large, luminous eyes that took up half its face. Its moth-like wings were torn and burned. It trembled as Dong-woo treated its wounds. "Why did you come?" the child asked in broken Galactic Common. The council said no one would come. Dong-woo's hands were steady as he worked. "Because someone needed help. That's reason enough." Around him, the medical bay they'd set up was chaos. Valani civilians streamed in, wounded and traumatized. The human medical team worked without stopping, treating injuries, distributing supplies, teaching the local doctors how to handle wounds they'd never seen before. A Valani physician watched Dong-woo work with amazement. "You're so fast. So efficient. Like you've done this 1,000 times." "We have," Dong-woo said quietly. "Humans have a lot of practice saving people during active combat." Back in space, engineer Sora was performing miracles. The Indomitable had taken damage that should have destroyed it 3 times over. Hull breaches, reactor problems, weapon systems offline. But Sora moved through the ship like a dancer, jury-rigging repairs that violated every safety standard ever written. "This shouldn't work," her assistant said, staring at the reactor configuration. "You've bypassed 17 safety systems." "Safety systems are suggestions," Sora replied, welding another patch. "The reactor will hold. Earth engineering is built on redundancy. Everything has a backup. The backups have backups. And if all else fails, we improvise." At the council station, military analysts were doing deep research into human history. They needed to understand what they were dealing with. One analyst pulled up Earth's geological record. "Look at this planet," she said to her colleagues. 96% of all species that ever lived on Earth went extinct. The planet has been hit by asteroids covered in ice cooked by volcanic eruptions. It's been trying to kill everything on it for billions of years. And humans survived, another analyst said. They thrived. They became the dominant species not because they were the strongest or fastest, but because they were too stubborn to die. On the main council floor, Jiwan was still making her case. "You want to know what makes humans different? Let me show you." She pulled up Earth's history on the main hologram. Images flashed past. Humans surviving ice ages. Humans rebuilding after wars that killed millions. Humans adapting to every environment on their planet, from frozen poles to scorching deserts. Every other species in this council evolved on balanced worlds, Jiwan said. Predictable weather. Manageable predators. Stable ecosystems. Earth gave humans none of that. Earth tried to kill them every single day, and they learned to take the punishment and keep going. A council member stood up. This doesn't justify their methods. They used chemical weapons. They performed atmospheric entry during combat. They're pursuing the Krothic against direct orders. Would you prefer they let the swarm regroup and attack another world? Jiwan asked. Because that's what happens if we don't finish this. Taesung's voice suddenly came through the council's communication system. Ambassador, this is Captain Taesung. We've received new intelligence on the Krothic Nest world, requesting permission to proceed with pursuit. The council leader looked like he might explode. Permission denied. Captain, you are ordered to return to... With respect, Taesung interrupted. If you wanted us to follow orders, you shouldn't have asked Deathworlders for help. We're going after the nest. You can court-martial us later. The communication cut off. Jiwan tried not to smile. The 4 human ships designated for pursuit were already moving. Taesung had left 8 ships behind to protect Valanus Prime. The remaining 4 would be enough for a reconnaissance mission. Or at least, that's what Taesung told himself. Pilot Sung Min sat in his fighter craft, ready for the most dangerous mission yet. He would fly ahead of the main fleet, getting close to the Krothic Nest world, mapping their defenses. It was a suicide mission by any reasonable standard. Sung Min checked his systems and smiled. Good thing he wasn't reasonable. Ready when you are, Captain, he called over the comm. Remember, Sung Min, Taesung said. This is reconnaissance only. Get in, get the data, get out. Don't be a hero. Too late for that, sir. Sung Min launched from the Indomitable and accelerated toward the retreating swarm. His fighter was small, fast, and heavily armored. It had been designed by engineers who understood that human pilots would do reckless things. It could take a beating and keep flying, it would need to. The Krothic spotted him immediately. Bioships peeled off from the main swarm, rushing to intercept. Sung Min jinked left, rolled right, dove down. His hands moved on the controls like he was playing an instrument. The first hit shook his craft. The second knocked out his rear shields. The third made alarm scream. Taking fire, Sung Min reported calmly. Shields at 40%, a fourth hit, a fifth. His cockpit filled with smoke. Shields at 10%. Hull breach in Section 3. Taesung watched from the Indomitable, his hands gripping his chair. Sung Min, abort the mission. Get back here. Almost got the data, sir. Just need another minute. Sung Min pushed his fighter deeper into the swarm. His shields were gone now. The Krothic were hitting his bare hull. Metal groaned. Systems failed. But his sensors were still working, still gathering data on the Krothic Nest world's defenses. Got it, Sung Min shouted. Transmitting now. Might want to send someone to pick me up. His engine exploded. The fighter craft tumbled through space, dead and powerless. Inside, Sung Min was thrown against his restraints. Blood ran down his face. His vision swam. Sung Min, respond. Heejin called. Still alive, Sungmin coughed. Ship's dead, though. Could use that pickup now. On the Indomitable, Taesung made a calculation. They were too far away. Sungmin would be torn apart before they could reach him. But Engineer Sora had an idea. A terrible, beautiful idea. Captain, if we overclock the reactor to 140%, we can reach him in 90 seconds. The ship will tear apart at that speed, Heejin said. Then we better be good at holding things together. Sora's hands were already moving. Give me the word, Captain. Taesung didn't hesitate. Do it. The Indomitable leaped forward like a missile. The acceleration was crushing. The reactor screamed. Every system redlined, but they were moving faster than physics said they should, faster than any other species would dare. They reached Sung Min with 15 seconds to spare. The ship's emergency grapple snagged his fighter and pulled him into the hangar bay. Medical teams were waiting. As they pulled Sung Min from his ruined cockpit, he grinned through the blood. Did you get the data? We got it, Taesung confirmed. You crazy bastard? Takes one to know one, sir. The data Sung Min had gathered showed the Krothic Nest world. It was massive, surrounded by millions of bioships. Defending it with conventional tactics would be impossible. Good thing humans didn't use conventional tactics. Ye Jin studied the data with Dr. Dongwu, who had returned from the surface. As a doctor, Dongwu understood biology better than most. Look at this, Dongwu said, pointing to the structure of the Krothic communication network. They're all connected to the hive mind. Every single drone is... Part 1. The Distress Call. The alarm screamed through the bridge of the Indomitable, cutting through the usual hum of engines and computers. Captain Taesung was on his feet before the second beep, his coffee forgotten on the arm of his chair. The mug tumbled and spilled, but nobody noticed. All eyes were on the main screen where red emergency symbols blinked like angry stars. Report, Taesung said, his voice calm despite the chaos erupting around him. Lieutenant Hyejin's fingers flew across her console. Distress signal from Valanus Prime, sir. Multiple sources. They're using every frequency they have. She paused, her face going pale. Captain, they're screaming for help. The main screen flickered and resolved into an image that made even the hardened crew of the Indomitable go quiet. Valanus Prime had been a beautiful world once, with crystal cities that caught the light of their blue sun. Now darkness covered the planet like a shroud. Millions of black shapes swarmed through the atmosphere, blotting out the sky. The Krothic Swarm, whispered the navigation officer. Everyone knew that name. Everyone feared it. Taesung leaned forward. How long do they have? Hyejin checked her readings twice before answering. 48 hours. Maybe less. The Krothic are eating through their defenses like they're made of paper. A new voice crackled through the speakers. It was weak, broken by static and what might have been sobbing. This is Valanus Prime, please, anyone. The council said they would send help. They said to wait, but the swarm is here now. Our children are dying, please. The bridge fell silent. Taesung clenched his jaw so hard it hurt. He knew what came next. The protocol, the procedure, the council's way of doing things. Get me Ambassador G1, he said quietly. The screen split. On one half, Valanus Prime burned. On the other, Ambassador G1 appeared. She looked tired, her hair pulled back tight, dark circles under her eyes. Behind her, Taesung could see the gleaming halls of the Galactic Council station. Captain, she said, I know why you're calling. Then you know what I'm going to ask. G1 sighed. The Council is aware of the situation at Valanus Prime. They're preparing a strategic response. How long will that take? 6 months. Standard protocol requires 6 months? Hyejin couldn't stop herself. They'll be dead in 2 days. G1's face hardened. I know. I've been arguing with them for 3 hours. They won't move faster. They say rushing in without proper planning is how wars start. Taesung stood up straight. Connect me to the rest of the fleet. Captain, wait. G1 started, but Taesung was already moving. Within minutes, the faces of 11 other ship captains filled the screen. Human faces, all of them. They'd all heard the distress call. They all knew what the council would say. 2 days, Taesung said simply. They have 2 days. The council wants 6 months. Captain Dongmin of the Relentless spoke first. How far? 4 days at maximum speed, replied Heejin. But sir, maximum speed for us would destroy most ships. The G-forces alone, and we're not most ship, said Captain Bora of the Steadfast. How fast can we actually go if we don't care about safety margins? The engineer Sora looked up from her station. We could make it in 36 hours, but I'd need to push the reactor to 120%. The manufacturer says that's impossible. Taesung almost smiled. Good thing we've never listened to manufacturers. Can you do it? Sora grinned. Give me 20 minutes. Jiwon's face reappeared on the screen. Captain Taesung, the council is ordering you to stand down. You don't have authorization for military action. If you disobey, there will be consequences. What kind of consequences? Taesung asked. Court-martial, imprisonment, your entire fleet could be. Will they send someone to save the Vellani? Jiwon looked away. No. Then I'll take my chances with court-martial. Taesung turned to his crew. Anyone who wants to stay behind, now's your chance. I won't think less of you. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. They all just looked at him with the same expression. The one that said they'd already made their choice before he even asked. Dr. Dongwu stood up from his station in the medical bay. Through the intercom, his voice was steady. I'll prep the medical bay for combat casualties. Both theirs and ours. All ships prepare for emergency acceleration, Taesung ordered. We leave in 20 minutes. The next 18 minutes were chaos. Sora and her engineering team worked miracles, pulling safety limiters and rerouting power systems. Hyojin calculated a jump trajectory that would put them right on top of Valanus Prime. A maneuver so dangerous it was technically illegal in 70 systems. Dongwu stocked medical supplies and strapped down everything that could become a projectile at high G-forces. On the council station, Jiwon watched her screens with growing horror. They're really doing it, she whispered. They're really going. A counselor appeared behind her, one of the tall, graceful beings from Nexus Prime. Ambassador, your people must be stopped. Their actions violate 17 treaties and, my people, Jiwon said slowly, are doing what you won't. They're saving lives. At what cost? They'll start a war. The Krothic already started the war. You just chose not to fight it. On the Indomitable, Taesung strapped himself into his chair. Around him, his crew did the same. The acceleration would be brutal. Many would pass out. Some might not wake up, but they'd done worse. All ships report ready, Hyojin said. Send one message to Valanus Prime, Taesung ordered. Tell them help is coming. Tell them to hold on for 36 more hours. What should I tell the council? Jiwon asked quietly. Taesung looked at the screen, at the burning planet, at the desperate aliens calling for help that wasn't coming. He thought about his own colony world, the one that burned while the council debated and discussed and followed protocol. He thought about waiting 3 days in a damaged escape pod, watching the air gauge drop, believing that help would come. Help never came. Not for him, not in time. Tell the council, he said, that the Deathworlders have this under control. The engine screamed to life. The Indomitable shuddered, groaned, and then leaped forward like a missile. Behind it, 11 other ships did the same. Alarms wailed as the acceleration pushed past safe limits. The G-forces crushed the crew into their seats. Taesung felt his vision narrow, his chest compressed, every breath a battle. But they were moving. They were going. They would get there. On the council station, sensors went crazy. A counselor stared at his screen in disbelief. They're traveling at speeds that should tear their ships apart. How is this possible? Jiwon watched the 12 human ships vanish into faster-than-light travel. She felt something like pride mixed with worry. Because, she said quietly, they're from a world that spent millions of years trying to kill them. They learned to take the punishment and keep moving. On Valanus Prime, in a bunker deep underground, a Vellani mother held her child close. Above them, the Krothic swarm pounded against their last defenses. Around them, others wept in despair. The council's help wouldn't come. Everyone knew it now. Then a message came through, crackling and distorted by the interference of the swarm above. Valanus Prime, this is the human fleet Indomitable. We received your call. Help is coming. Hold on. We're coming. The Vellani mother looked at her child. What are humans? The little one asked. The mother didn't know. But she held her child tighter and whispered, I think they're hope. Above the planet, the Krothic swarm continued its feast, unaware that something was coming. Something that didn't know how to quit. Something that had answered the call. The Deathworlders were coming to help. Part 2. Arrival of the Deathworlders. The Crothic swarm had consumed 17 civilizations. They moved through space like a living plague, their bioships breeding and spreading until they blotted out stars. They had no art, no culture, no purpose beyond feeding and growing. The hive mind that controlled them had never known defeat. Until 36 hours after the distress call, when space itself seemed to tear open above Valanus Prime. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly into the battle zone. It was a maneuver that violated every rule of safe space travel. The sudden appearance created a shockwave that rippled through the Crothic formation, sending thousands of bioships tumbling through space. In the bunker below, alarms started blaring again. But this time they weren't warnings of the swarm. They were reading something else. Something new. What is that? A Vallani technician whispered, staring at his screen. Those energy signatures. Nothing should be able to move that fast. On the Indomitable, Captain Tae-sung pulled himself out of his chair. His body ached from the brutal acceleration. Around him, crew members were waking up, shaking off the unconsciousness that high-G travel brought. 3 hadn't woken yet. Dr. Dongwu was already moving to help them. Status report, Tae-sung said, his voice rough. Heejin's console was lighting up like a festival. All 12 ships accounted for. Some damage, but everyone's operational. The Crothic swarm, she paused. Sir, there are millions of them. The main screen showed the nightmare that surrounded Valanus Prime. The swarm wasn't just attacking the planet. They had become a living shell around it, layer upon layer of black bioships pulsing and moving like a diseased heart. Where are their defenses weakest? Tae-sung asked. Sir, they don't have weak points. They're everywhere. The Vallani only have hours left. Tae-sung studied the screen. The Crothic moved in patterns, flowing and shifting like a liquid. He'd seen something like it before back on Earth. Ants, bees, insects that worked as one mind. Heejin, how do they communicate? Best guess? Pheromones. Chemical signals. They're passing instructions through direct contact. Then we confuse the signals. Tae-sung turned to the engineering station. Sora, what do we have in our chemical stores? Engineer Sora pulled up her inventory. Her eyes widened as she understood what he was thinking. Industrial solvents, cleaning agents, synthetic compounds. Captain, are you suggesting we make them fight each other? Can you do it? Sora's fingers danced across her console. Give me 15 minutes and I can create a pheromone cocktail that would make a beehive tear itself apart. But we'd need to get close. Really close. How close? Atmospheric entry close. The bridge went quiet. Atmospheric entry during combat was suicide for most species. Their ships were too fragile, their pilots too delicate. Pilot Kyung-ho spoke up from his station. I can do it. You'll be flying through the swarm, Heejin warned. They'll try to rip you apart. Kyung-ho grinned. Let them try. 20 minutes later, Kyung-ho was strapped into a small attack craft, Sora's chemical weapon loaded in the cargo bay. The plan was simple and insane in equal measure. Fly into the swarm, get close to the planet, release the chemicals, and get out before the Crothic realized what was happening. All ships form defensive positions, Tae-sung ordered. We're giving Kyung-ho a path. The human fleet moved into formation. What happened next would become legendary in galactic military history. The Indomitable and its sister ships began spinning, their weapon systems firing in all directions. They created a sphere of destruction, a wall of explosive fire that carved a tunnel through the swarm. Kyung-ho punched his engines and dove into the tunnel. The Crothic reacted instantly. Bioships peeled away from the planet, rushing to fill the gap. They crashed against the human defensive formation like waves against rocks. The human ships shook, their hulls groaning under the impact. Shields at 60%, Heijin reported. 50, 40. Hold position, Tae-sung ordered. On the council station, Ambassador Ji-won watched with the gathered representatives. The council members stood in horror as they saw human ships taking damage that should have destroyed them. Why aren't they retreating? A counselor asked. Because they gave their word, Ji-won said quietly. Kyung-ho's attack craft was a dart of light cutting through darkness. Crothic bioships slammed into his shields. His cockpit shook so hard his vision blurred. Alarms screamed warnings about hull integrity, shield failure, engine overload. He ignored all of them and flew faster. Approaching the planet's atmosphere, he called over the comm. Beginning descent. His ship hit the upper atmosphere at speeds that turned his hull into a meteor. Fire engulfed his craft. The temperature inside climbed. Sweat poured down his face. His hands gripped the controls so hard they hurt, and he was smiling. Releasing payload in 3, 2, 1. Now the cargo bay doors opened. Sora's chemical weapon sprayed out into the atmosphere, carried by the wind and the momentum of Kyung-ho's descent. The synthetic pheromones spread through the swarm like invisible fire. The effect was immediate and terrible. Crothic bioships stopped their coordinated attack. They began turning on each other, their chemical communication corrupted by Sora's creation. The hive mind screamed orders that its drones couldn't understand anymore. The organized swarm became chaos. In the bunker, the Villani watched their sensors in disbelief. They're fighting each other. The technician whispered. The swarm is fighting itself. Who did this? The Villani mother asked. Who are these humans? Kyung-ho pulled his craft out of its dive with seconds to spare. His engines were failing, his shields were gone, and half his systems were offline. But he was alive and climbing back toward the fleet. Good work, Tae-sung said over the comm. Now get back here before you fall apart completely. The swarm's confusion gave the human fleet an opening. Tae-sung seized it. All ships advance. Target the largest concentrations. Haejin, activate Hellfire Protocol. Haejin's hands moved with practiced precision. The Indomitable began to spin on its axis, every weapon system firing in sequence. The ship became a wheel of destruction, cutting through the confused swarm like a blade. The other ships followed suit. 12 human vessels, each one spinning, firing, advancing. They pushed toward Valanus Prime, creating a protective barrier between the planet and the swarm. Dr. Dongwoo watched from his medical bay, ready to treat the wounded. But he was also preparing for another task. If they could break through to the planet's surface, there would be refugees who needed help. Civilians who had been hiding in bunkers waiting for death or rescue. Medical team, prepare for surface operations, he ordered. We're going down there as soon as it's clear. Sir, it won't be clear, a nurse said. The fighting will still be happening. Dongwoo checked his supplies. I know. That's why we train for combat medicine. On the council station, military analysts were pulling up Earth's historical records. They needed to understand how these humans were winning against impossible odds. Look at this, one analyst said, pointing to his screen. Earth's history is a catalog of disasters. Plagues that killed half their population, wars that lasted decades, natural disasters that destroyed entire cities. And they survived all of it. How? Another asked. Stubbornness. They simply refused to die. The Crothic hive mind was experiencing something it had never felt before. Confusion. Fear. This small fleet of strange ships was tearing through its drones like they were nothing. The chemical attack had been clever, but that could be adapted to. What the hive mind couldn't adapt to was the sheer aggression. These beings didn't retreat. They didn't hesitate. They attacked with a fury that seemed impossible to maintain. Where did they find this energy? This determination? The hive mind made a decision. It would deploy its ultimate weapon. The fear attack. The Crothic had perfected biological warfare over millions of years. They could release spores that caused paralytic terror in any species. It worked on every single race they'd encountered. It would work on these humans too. The swarm released the spores. On the Indomitable, sensors detected the biological agent immediately. Captain, they're deploying some kind of chemical weapon, Haejin reported. It's designed to cause extreme fear responses. The crew tensed, waiting for the panic to hit, waiting for the terror that would freeze their bodies and minds. Nothing happened. Tae-sung frowned. Is our filtration system working? No, sir, Sora said, checking her readings. The spores are in our ship. They're in our air. They're just not doing anything. Haejin started laughing. She couldn't help it. They tried to scare us. The swarm tried to scare humans. The laughter spread through the bridge. Not mockery, but the genuine amusement of people who had lived with nuclear weapons pointed at their own planet for decades, who had survived ice ages and asteroid impacts and their own worst impulses. The Crothic could make them afraid. Humans woke up afraid every day. They just didn't let it stop them. Haejin, open a channel to the swarm, Tae-sung said. Sir, they might not understand. They'll understand tone. Send this. Your fear tactics are adorable. For the first time in its existence, the Crothic hive mind felt something close to despair. These creatures were impossible. They couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be frightened, couldn't be stopped. The hive mind gave an order it had never given before. Retreat.